Hello. Shalom Aleichem. Welcome.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Hey, Yussel, we missed you this morning. Hello, Michael. You would have had a lot to say this morning. We missed you. All about Hillel and Shammai. Okay. Mr. Gaventher is here. Hey, Bob. By the way, that video was really nice. I shared it with a few people. Thank you very much.
Welcome.
Rabbi,
Anyone who's looking for a inexpensive, beautiful place with a fantastic community to live in, look at our video. Okay. So today is Chamishi. We live with the times, with the Parsha of the week. And today we are up to the 5th Aliyah in Va'era. And here is where it gets interesting, because we're deep into the plagues now. And we begin in the middle of the plague of frogs. So today I'm going to get a little bit esoteric, because one of the concepts, the idea is the Torah is eternal, and the Torah always has something to teach us. And sometimes what it teaches us is allegorical. And that's the purpose of Midrash. So the question is, Mitzrayim, Egypt, denotes the imprisonment, the slavery to the limits of the world as we know it, to slavery to our desires, to social conventions, to what other people think, to the limits of our own negative inclinations. So how is Egypt defeated? How are the Jews busted out of Egypt? By the plagues. So the concept is that each of the plagues breaks some negative aspect of Egypt. So in our internal Egypt, our internal slavery to our own negativity, there are things that need to be broken. So the first two plagues that we just read about yesterday, we didn't have a class, and we continue to read about today, which is the frogs. So you have the blood and the frogs. What happens to the Nile River? The water becomes blood. What's with the frogs? The frogs come out of the river, though I think one of the Greek translations is crocodiles, which is more interesting and scary, but we'll go with frogs. And they get into everyone's houses and their ovens and their hearths and so on. So what we have here is water is cold, and it's cold and neutral. And blood is hot and full of all kinds of substances that are either good or destructive, depending on whether it's inside you or you have to drink it. Frogs are cold-blooded animals that live in the water to regulate their temperature. They're cold. And here they come out of the river, not just to dry land where in Egypt it's hot, but they jump into the Egyptians' ovens to cool down the ovens to make their lives miserable. How does this relate to our internal spiritual life? Well, there are two aspects of Egypt that we struggle with. One aspect of Egypt is in other words, our internal Egypt, our internal negativity is the coldness. We are cold and indifferent to godliness, to what's asked of us. Get up to daven. I'm tired. I want to sleep. What are you getting so excited about? I have my life. We're not excited about opportunities to do mitzvot. We're not intensely yearning and thirsting for another word of Torah. We see prayer as a burden. We are cold and indifferent. That's part of having a body. It's like, can I eat it? Can I wear it? Does it go in my pocket? Well, then I don't care. That's the nature of the body and the animal soul. Cold and indifferent. So what happens to the Egypt within us? So the plague is the destruction of that indifference, is the turning of the Nile into blood, into something hot and strongly and strongly mixed with other things. But it's hot, it's warm. Water is cold, and neutral. And this is warm and anything but neutral. In other words, the indifference, we need to excite ourselves about Judaism. We need to understand how ephemeral and passing the world, everything else is, and how fundamental and important our role is. We have to excite ourselves and become enthusiastic about our Judaism. We need to understand that indifference is the coldness of death. It's drowning in the waters of Egypt and the Nile. We have to find ways to excite and enthuse ourselves, to understand how fragile life is, and how we, out of that fragility, we can still extract meaning and purpose.
Rabbi,
Yep.
a question.
No.
So I understand where you're going, but at the same time, it sounds like a criticism of nature. Let's face it. So the Nile, first of all, the Nile is not cold. I can promise you, not in Egypt at 140 degrees.
Yussel, the water in the Nile is much colder than everything else around it.
Yeah, that's true. Like
Joe, cold and hot are relative.
But I'm just saying, it's a natural. The Nile is the way it is because that's how it evolved. That's part of creation. So we cannot use this as a negative to make a positive
Joe,
statement.
you're making a very good point, and I will suggest to you that God created nature, and nature is our greatest ally, and nature is our greatest enemy.
Exactly.
In other words, accepting nature as it is, unformed. What is nature? Red in tooth and claw, as the great line goes. In other words, nature by itself is your enemy. Nature is the unrefined world that if you leave it unrefined, it's like a bull. Take a bull and put a harness on it, it can plow the fields for you. Leave it alone in the china shop, achenvei. Nature and our animal nature is very dangerous left alone. Let's talk about babies. Do you know why babies are cute? Because if they weren't cute, we'd kill them, chas v'shalom. Because what do? They're selfish. They cry in the middle of the night when you're trying to sleep. They have unending demands of intention. They have no gratitude, right? They're babies. But you can have grown-up babies. You can have someone who's completely absorbed in their self and their ego and their desires, and the heck with everyone else. And the heck with God. Nature by itself, you know something very interesting? Rabbi Shimshon Raphael Hirsch says a fascinating thing. He says that if you look at pagan temples, they're all rounded and arched and curved. You know, think of the Greek temples and so on. They're all about imitating forms of nature because paganism, idol worship, takes nature as it is and worships it and makes a virtue out of nature, no matter how corrupt and immoral it is. Everything in the Mishkan and the Beit HaMikdash is squared off. The altar is squared off, straight lines, very postmodern. Everything is straight and squared and cut. Why? Even according to Maimonides, the menorah is not curved, but straight out, diagonal. Why? Because our goal is to take nature and transform it into a mishkan and for a dwelling place for God. Nature alone, without us imposing our will and vision on it, is destructive and evil. Yes, the Nile alone gives rise to a pharaoh. So the coldness of nature, the indifference of the physical body to spiritual and moral and ethical things needs to be crushed and transformed. That is the plague of the Nile, turning it into blood. Conversely, passion is not always a good thing. We have the passion of anger. We have the passion of hatred of another for some external reason. We have passion for physical pleasure that goes against the Torah. We have passions for various things that we desire and like, or various vendettas against people that destroy us and destroy the other. So that heat, that's warmth, that excitement, that passion, it needs frogs. Into that oven, you got to throw the frogs from the cold Nile, needs to be cooled down. And this is the great dichotomy of life. That which we are naturally excited about has to be cooled down, and that which we're naturally indifferent to needs to be warmed up. And this is the great lesson of the first two plagues, because we all know what it, we're not all Hobbesians. We don't all believe in autocracy. But what Hobbes said at the beginning of his book, The Leviathan, is very true. That man's life in the state of nature is of necessity brutish and short. And it's true. We have to use our soul and our minds to lift us up. And there are two necessities to do that. One, to excite that which is indifferent by the state of nature, and to cool down the passions that we are born with. And this is the conceptual, the midrashic lesson, as if it were, from the ethical lesson from the first two plagues in the metaphorical Egypt, which isn't metaphorical. We have an Egypt, we have a Pharaoh, we have the negativity within us and within society that has to be directed and molded and cut and sliced till the hand of man, of the good man, of the man that follows his soul, godly soul and mind, is upon it, his or her, of course. Okay.
Rabbi, that was great.
And
that was a very good analogy.
It isn't mine.
Well, it is yours. You gave it to me.
It's a combination of things. It's Reb Shimshon Raphael Hirsch, the Ramban, and the Lubavitcher Rebbe, the last one. Okay.
Oh, where is Soloveitchik? We're going to start
Soloveitchik we had
about...
yesterday. I rotate my authorities.
No, but when we're going to do the halachic man, I think
but you know what? The other book that you showed me, that builds on the lonely man of faith. So this is where Soloveitchik talks about the natural man, and then the halachic man moves on from the natural man. And yeah, Sunday we're gonna start studying the halachic man. Very, very important work.
Did you read that the little introduction by the translator? It should be, because he's using.
We will start with it. That's fine. I usually skip those, but you said to read it. I'll read it. We'll start with it. Okay. We have one more minute. So I want to go on to one other thing, and that is the. It says as follows. Moshe. It says that Moshe went away from Pharaoh, and Moshe cried out to God on the matter of the Tzfardim. So why does he cry out to God? In other words, he does so publicly in the presence of the Egyptians, so they should know that this isn't some freak natural occurrence, but that it is coming from God. Again, because frogs, I assume plagues of frogs or crocodiles happen sometimes. What was unique here was, one, the extreme volume, but the other aspect was the fact that it started and ended exactly when God said it was. Sometimes the miracle is in the timing, not in the change from nature. So Moshe has to cry out to God because of the timing, to demonstrate that this is Hashem's hand. Because otherwise, you might think that it's a natural phenomenon. Okay. Well, thank you all for joining us today for our 15 minutes of learning. Yeah, Joe.
You know what I heard? I'm sorry, but I heard Sfardim.
No, Sephardim with a tzaddik. With a tzaddik. We are not criticizing Jews of Spanish origin, God forbid. Without them, we have nothing to discuss. No Rambam, no Ramban, no Ben Ish Chai. Sfardim. No, but this is frogs or crocodiles. Okay. Have a very good day, everyone, and hopefully we'll see you tomorrow with Hashem. All the best.
Thank you very much, Rabbi.
Thank you, Rav.
Thanks for joining us.